So I was playing Heavy Rain back earlier this year, and I had this situation where I had this guy at gunpoint, and it was very, very stressful. And I wanted to see what my character was thinking, which is one of the mechanics you can do. Based on like, the previous control scheme, I pressed R1, and I shot the guy in the head by accident. And the guy died, and the whole scene was diffused, and all the tension was diffused. And it was hilarious to me. And so I got thinking, like, why was that funny? So I went to a GDC talk about comedy in games. Tim Schafer was there, who did Psychonauts and The Legend and worked on Monkey Island. And mostly he talked about writing. You know, what's funny writing? How do you work writing in the games? How do you deal with working with designers and making sure that everything's in balance, which was interesting, but not what I was looking for. And there's a lot of, there's precedence for a lot of humor in games. There's games that'll name things in a funny way or use funny tactics, adventure games, RPGs. There'll be characters who make funny quips, like Nathan Drake in Uncharted, who say something that's funny, or games will just make their entire world absurd, like Earthworm Jim or Toe Jam and Earl. But that's comedy through writing, and it doesn't apply to my situation. And so I was thinking more about, well, what is comedy in design? What is comedy through design? So I wanted to look at it scientifically and look at humor. So I did some research about humor and what exactly makes something funny. So I want to start off with the world's funniest joke, or at least one of the world's funniest jokes by this study called Laugh Lab that was done in 2002. So here's the joke. So a woman walks onto a bus with her baby, and the bus driver says, "Oh, that is the ugliest baby I've ever seen. Oh!" And the woman goes to the back of the bus, and she's fuming, and she's furious. She sits down next to this guy, and she goes, "That bus driver just insulted me." The guy goes, "You know what? You go tell him off. Go ahead. I'll hold your monkey." Right? So why is that funny? So let's go through some theories. There's this theory called the incongruity theory, which is a pretty popular one. It was originally started by Kant. And I'll just sort of read the definition here. It says, humor is perceived at the moment of realization of incongruity between a concept involved in a certain situation and the real objects thought to be in some relation to the concept. So the main point is this realization that you're not getting what you were expecting to get. So I'm going to connect that to the joke and now destroy the joke and destroy anything that was funny about it. So we're expecting the guy to say, "I'll hold your baby," and he says, "I'll hold your monkey." And so there's the incongruity. And you expect him to support her, and he insults her again. Poor woman, right? So there's another theory called the benign violation theory, which basically says that this happens when three conditions are satisfied. One, something threatens one's sense of how the world ought to be. Two, that the threatening situation seems benign, and that you see both of those things at the same time. And what I mean by benign is that you're distanced from it in some way, or you're not really committed to the norm that was broken in the first place. So everything's okay, right? So just if we think back to that joke again, he's making fun of her baby, this poor one, but it's not our baby. This isn't a real woman. We know that. Like, maybe if you have a baby and your baby is ugly, that joke is not funny. but you kind of get what I'm saying, right? So this is a departure. I want to talk about this too. Is the superiority theory, which is something Plato and Aristotle sort of started. Which is that we basically laugh at inferior individuals because we feel joy at being superior to them. That's probably only true, again, if there's some benignness to the situation, if we're distant from them. There is some humor to people getting hurt, basically. But I want to reiterate, these aren't theories yet about how to make something funny. These are just why things are funny. And they're wired into our brains. So I want to read this theory about evolution and how humor came to be. This guy, Alistair Clark, says the pattern recognition theory. It says humor occurs when the brain recognizes a pattern that surprises it, and that recognition is rewarded with the experience of the humorous response. An ability to recognize patterns instantly and unconsciously has proved a fundamental weapon in the cognitive arsenal of human beings. The humorous reward has encouraged the development of such faculties, leading to the unique perceptual and intellectual abilities of our species. So basically, it's a reward system for pattern recognition that, if you, as a caveman, know how an animal is trying to escape, your brain rewards you by recognizing that if that pattern is broken, good job, you're good at pattern recognition, and thus, people evolve and like that sense, and that moves forward. So this is all about shorting our expectations, right? All these theories, for the most part, except for superiority, are about a setup and a turn, which is how comedians look at it, right? They set up the joke. Woman's getting on the bus, and this poor woman, and then there's a turn. Oh, the guy calls her monkey. Isn't that funny? Because it's not a monkey, it's a baby, and that's the turn. But the problem with games, to take back to games now, is that being intuitive is a core thing in games. And how do you trick players, or how do you turn something on a player when the rules and the controls and the level design all have to sort of make sense to them? you don't want the game not to make sense to them because it's a bad experience, or it feels like a bad experience. So let's look at some things that are funny in games that are sort of emergent. So one is glitches, right? I looked in online threads about what people thought was funny in games, and people find glitches funny. So this is Red Dead Redemption, and there's a deer floating in the sky, and it's funny, right? Why is it funny? It's unexpected. There's incongruity there. We have got sort of a superiority complex versus the designers. Something else that's funny is like if someone else loses extremely, and it's funny or sort of wacky or extreme. But I think it's funny if it's someone else, obviously, or if the loss is mitigated, if you don't lose as much. Smash Brothers does this, where it has so many items you can start throwing in there that you can die unfairly, but it's kind of okay, it's kind of funny. And then there's reactionary humor, which is maybe something that you could do where the game sort of sees what you're doing and then tricks you, so that when the game changes, you as the player know that the game did that intelligently, that it wasn't just cheap, that the game's sort of playing a trick on you. So I don't know if that would be funny, but I thought it was something worth trying. So why was my Heavy Rain experience funny? I think that the game got me really stressed, and even though this was by accident, what happened is the game surprised me. There was this incongruity, but it was benign because I was relieved. This game was so stressful and bumming me out, but the fact that I shot this guy and the situation was over, and sort of the superiority of it was amusing to me. So in conclusion, I think that we can do better than this sort of stuff, which is just naming things funny. This is from Death Spank, which is a recent game, which is, I hear it, a good game always, but still, the humor in this is still just naming items funnily, and you get +2 ballsy and isn't that cute. So I think there are ways to work comedy into design.